Hey everyone, welcome to my Let's Play of Tony Hawk's Pro Skater. As you can see, this is the Dreamcast version, which in my opinion is the definitive version of this game. This is the first Let's Play that I've ever done, so admittedly I don't really know what I'm doing, but I decided to go ahead and give this a shot, and we'll see how well this turns out. I've been wanting to do this for years. I think around 8 years ago or so I had the idea of doing a Let's Play of this game. Because it's not a very long game, I can do it in this one video, and it's a game that I know decently well. I'm not claiming I'm the best at it or anything, but it's a game I know well enough that I can make a video on, so I thought it would be a good introduction to doing Let's Plays. As you can see, this port was done by Treyarch, so years before they were making Call of Duty games, they were making Dreamcast ports of other games. They did this game, Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 2, and Spider-Man for the Dreamcast, all of which were originally developed by Neversoft, as you see here. So in this video, this is going to be a full playthrough with one skater, so I'm going to get all 30 tapes, and I'm going to get gold medals in all of the competitions. With that in mind, I'm not a speedrunner, so this video isn't very long, but in no way, shape, or form am I a speedrunner of this game. I don't do a lot of the advanced techniques that they do, and they are in a world of their own. I have nowhere near the skill level that they have, but I still feel like I'm decent enough at this game that this wouldn't be a terrible video that you would get bored watching. I originally recorded this back in October of last year, so this is not being commentated on as I'm playing it. This is post-commentary. When I originally envisioned doing this video years ago, I thought I would do commentary as I played it, but then I realized I would either most likely end up focusing way too much on the gameplay and then I wouldn't be talking enough, or I would focus too much on talking and the gameplay just wouldn't be very good. So I decided I would just film the gameplay and then do a post commentary on it. Why it took me from October of last year until now to actually do it, that I don't know. I just got sidetracked with other things and decided to finally come back and finish this up since I had done all the editing. I put the video together and all that. It just needed commentary added to it. This was recorded on real hardware, so I'm playing this on a real Dreamcast. It's not emulated or anything. I'm flying through Warehouse right now. This is a very classic level. Everyone knows this level, but it's not very long. It's a pretty small level. There's not a lot of space to really skate around, and the objectives are so close to each other that you can finish the level very quickly. So right off the bat, there's one level done. Next level is School, the original School, not the School 2 that a lot of people remember from the second Tony Hawk's Pro Skater game. There is a pretty neat speedrunning trick. I'm not good at it, but this building kind of to the left of me, there's a way you can wall ride it, and you will end up on the awning. You'll get enough air to end up on that awning where the secret tape is, and that way you don't have to go the long way around like I'm doing here. But since I'm not good at that technique, I'm going to go the long way. Now, I said earlier that I believe the Dreamcast version is the definitive version of this game. One of the reasons I say that is graphically it is far superior to either the PlayStation or the N64 versions. This level is a good demonstration of that. So it's not just the texture quality or getting rid of some of the weird jagged effects that happen as you're skating through the level, but also the draw distance. This is a good example of the far superior draw distance that the Dreamcast version has. Out in the distance, I mean, on the N64 and PlayStation 1 versions, it would just be fog. It doesn't draw nearly as far as this one does. And of course, having the GD-ROM, this game has the full soundtrack and all the videos and everything, which is something that the N64 version did not have. If you're not familiar, the N64 version didn't have any videos, I don't believe. And it had a soundtrack, but it was reduced. It only had 6 songs on it, and I believe the songs were shortened. So instead of being the full length, they would be like a minute and a half versions of them that would loop. Whereas the PlayStation and the Dreamcast versions, I believe, have 11 songs in their soundtrack. There's also another port of this game that not many people talk about. I don't really know if a whole lot of people even know it exists, but it is the N-Gage port. And I actually have an N-Gage. I bought a used N-Gage a while back just to try out the Tony Hawk's Pro Skater port. I was curious to see how well a cell phone, essentially, from the early 2000s could handle a three-dimensional game like Tony Hawk. If you're not familiar with what the N-Gage is, it was a cell phone, essentially, that they wanted to sort of highlight its gaming capabilities and compete against the Game Boy Advance. I think the N-Gage came out somewhere around 2003, and that was before we had the PSP or even the Nintendo DS. So at that time, the Game Boy Advance was what most people would have as their portable gaming device. And Nokia used to be a huge cell phone company, and they wanted to take on Nintendo before Sony did with the PSP. Unfortunately, that did not work out too well for them. The N-Gage was a huge failure. Everyone hated it. It didn't sell well at all, and it was kind of a meme before memes were even really a thing. I don't think it had very many worthwhile games on it, but the Tony Hawk's Pro Skater port was surprisingly decent. Graphically, it looked pretty good. I mean, nowhere near as good as what we see here, but it was surprisingly playable, and it even had real songs on its soundtrack. It wasn't like a MIDI soundtrack or anything. It used real songs. Like the N64 version, it had a reduced soundtrack. I don't know exactly how many songs were on it, probably something like 6. And interestingly enough, I don't know if this was an oversight or if they were just trying to pull a fast one and they got away with it, but interesting bit of trivia, the soundtrack on the N-Gage version is completely uncensored. F-words and all. So there's like 2 songs I think that remained in the soundtrack for the N-Gage version that are 100% uncensored, despite the fact that it has a T for teen rating. But other than that, I mean, it's not really a port I would recommend checking out. For one, odds are very slim that you have access to an N-Gage. And if you've never seen an N-Gage in person, they're really small. They were a lot smaller than I thought they would be. I guess in my head, I always thought they would be similar in size to like the first model Game Boy Advance, but they're really just kind of like a standard Nokia phone from that time. So the problem is my thumb can cover every single button on the N-Gage, and a game like Tony Hawk where you have the 4 face buttons, it's really hard to play. So for that, I don't recommend it, but it is at least neat that it existed and that they tried. But that's really about it for ports of Tony Hawk's Pro Skater. There is a Game Boy Color version, but it's nothing like the other versions. It's like a side-scrolling thing. It's not very good. There was no PC version back then. Later Tony Hawk games would get a lot more ports of them, including versions for the PC and the Mac, but Tony Hawk's Pro Skater did not get that. Some people will sort of consider the Xbox version of Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 2X to be a port of Tony Hawk's Pro Skater. I'm not really a big fan of that. It's really more of a port of Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 2 with the levels of Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 1 included as a bonus feature. But the problem is it doesn't play anything like Tony Hawk's Pro Skater. The physics are all different. The way your skater moves and your air and speed and everything, it's just totally different. So I look at that more as playing any of these levels in like later Tony Hawk games in their classic mode, or playing them as part of Thug Pro or something like that. I don't really consider that a port. So with all that in mind, that's why I consider the Dreamcast version to be the best. Now this year marks the 20th anniversary of Tony Hawk's Pro Skater. So the original version of this game, the PlayStation version, came out in August of 1999, so 20 years this year. And if you're watching this video, I assume you're familiar with the Tony Hawk series, so you know that there were many more titles after this one. And this one's relatively simplistic in comparison to most of the later games. I mean, you can't manual in this game or revert or really do a whole lot of anything. It's very bare bones. You can't create a skater or modify your tricks or really kind of anything like that, but it's not a bad game, and it's pretty fun to play from time to time. So we just finished up this level. This is the 5th level that we've completed, and there's a total of 9 in the game, so we're a little bit more than halfway done. Like I mentioned before, it's not a very long game. You'll notice that all of the runs in this video are ones that I do all of the objectives within that single 2-minute run. When I recorded this was not one sort of single playthrough. I sort of spliced together multiple sessions of me playing. I decided to do that because I figured it would shorten the length of the video a little bit if I didn't have a whole lot of bails and things going on. And I thought that would make it slightly more interesting to watch. I didn't know if people would get turned away by seeing a bunch of bails and things. Not that I bail too often, but I kind of wanted to have more or less like near perfect runs. So this is sort of a compilation of runs that I have done in this game. And the reason I mention all of that now is this level here probably took something like 50 tries to get right. This level is notorious for being easy to sort of mess up if you're trying to do everything in a single go. Supposedly Tony Hawk himself really likes this level. The community as a whole sort of seems to hate it. I'm not a big fan of this level. It's a really sort of downhill shaped level, and the problem with that is if you miss something, it's kind of hard to get back up. You can skate your way back up, but you go really slowly, and it's really annoying, and it's the constant sort of downward angle of the level can throw off the physics and kind of lean you that way. So not a very fun level in my opinion. I'm not a big fan of it. But nonetheless, in this run, I did manage to get all of the objectives in that single run. And now we're going to head off to the second competition of this game. You probably didn't really get much of a chance to notice it in the first competition, Skate Park, because that one's fairly quick, but I have sort of a bad habit that I've always had with the Tony Hawk games, where when I do a competition, I stick pretty much exclusively to vert, and what I'll do is sort of go around the D-pad and alternate my tricks. So I'll probably start with like the up trick, and then the one that's like up to the right, and then the one that's right, and so on and so forth. Occasionally you'll see me do the same trick twice in a row. That's very rarely intentional. It's usually just because I couldn't get the D-pad to do exactly what I wanted it to do. Particularly with the up direction and the down direction, it's kind of hard to get it to register consistently. So I do acknowledge that it's probably slightly boring to watch my competition runs. Luckily they're not very long. They're like 30 seconds each run, but that's the way I used to always play. When I was a kid, I had sort of no concept of doing combos or anything, and the only way I knew how to get points was to just find like a half pipe somewhere and go back and forth doing vert tricks until I had, you know, like in this game, the pro score, later games, the 6 score. And that was a tactic I kept doing in the competitions. Now, I would say in later games I've gotten a little bit more diverse and added a lot more street skating into it, but with competitions I sort of stuck to this habit. So I don't know, just a weird thing I do with Tony Hawk games, I guess. But now we're done with this competition, so we're gonna go off to the last of the levels with goals in them, San Francisco. When I was a kid, I didn't think that this was a level that could have all of its objectives done in one run, but I was watching, I don't know if it was a speedrunner or a Twitch stream or what it was, but someone showed me a trick and it changed how I approach this level forever. And I'll do it in this level. It's probably not as exciting as I'm making it sound, but it is what enabled me to be able to do all of the objectives in a single run. And this is a fun level. I like this level. I don't think people really ever reference it a whole lot or, you know, talk about it, but it's a level I like. I'm not really sure why I like it so much, because it's kind of a big level and it's relatively flat. There's really not a whole lot of stuff to like trick off of, but something about this level, I'm a fan of it. So the trick I mentioned, it's going to come up right here, and it's where you use this building to get up onto this awning, and you know, of course the secret tape is off this ramp on the roof. And before I knew of this trick, I used to have to go the long way around, which was where you would start skating along the little structure thing that's like on the opposite corner, and then you hop along the awnings until you eventually get to where that little shortcut took us. But the shortcut is a lot nicer. What I used to always do was either do every objective except for the secret tape in one run, and then I would dedicate a run just for the secret tape, or I would often try to do it where I did all of the objectives except for maybe like the pro score, because again, there's not really a whole lot of stuff to trick off of, and it's difficult to combo in this game because there's no manuals or anything. And then I would sort of dedicate an entire run just for the pro score. But we're almost getting to the end of this level here. Not really sure what happens at the end of this level. I think I intended to hit that quarter pipe and I just sort of missed, but it worked out all the same, so good enough. I don't know if you saw it flash up on the screen there really quickly, but we unlocked Officer Dick. So that's the character you get when you complete all 30 tapes with any skater in the game, and he is a cop character. That's really about it. I think there's one other unlockable character if you get all of the gaps. I've heard. I don't think I've ever actually bothered to try that. I don't care enough to get all the gaps, but not a whole lot in the way of unlockables in this game, not like the later games had. Here we are on the final competition, Roswell. Like I mentioned before, I essentially do the same tactic I do for all my competitions, where I just go to this half pipe that's in the back of the level here, and I just start alternating my vert tricks. I occasionally throw in flips, which is a special trick for Jamie Thomas here. Not really a whole lot to say about this technique. But this is the last level of the game, so we are getting toward the end of this Let's Play. Before we do get to the end, I do want to give a shout out to Tyler Lasagna. Without him, I don't know if this video would exist. I know I had the idea to do this video, for many years now, but I don't know if I ever would have followed through with it if it wasn't for the inspiration that I got from him. He has been making absolutely phenomenal videos on Tony Hawk games as well as other games for many, many years now, and he does all sorts of good for the Tony Hawk community. He's always working on projects to introduce things for the community, so really cool guy, and wanted to give him a special shout out. And special shout out to you as well for watching this video and making it this far. I would be open to doing other Let's Plays, maybe like Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 2, or maybe even like Matt Hoffman's Pro BMX. So if that's something that you would be interested in seeing, let me know if you have any feedback or suggestions, and we'll see about making another one. I skipped the ending videos here because I took all the music out of this video, and I didn't know if you guys would be interested in seeing that without music. But that's it for this video. Thank you for watching, and have a great day.